I was a pretty and relatively smart 15-year-old girl, a good kid who did well in school despite a tough childhood. I was working at an amusement park full-time during the summer. The area I lived in could be a bit sketchy at times, but having grown up with little to no adult supervision, I was used to trying to look out for myself. My father was out of town. Mother was long out of the picture. My sister, 3 years older, and myself were staying at our home alone. I finished work at 11 p.m. when the park closed that day, and walked myself home as I usually did. It wasn't very far at all, perhaps just a 10-minute walk. I arrived to an empty home, my sister still out somewhere, and I got ready for bed, putting my pajamas on and crawling down into it. I was just starting to fall asleep when I heard a small noise. I didn't know what it was, but it didn't seem like just a usual house noise. My bedroom was on the second floor with stairs leading up to it. I didn't hear anything after that noise though, so I didn't investigate and chalked it up to nothing. I started to fall back asleep when, just as I was about to, I heard what sounded like hesitant footsteps on the stairs. I was instantly bolted awake, but in my mind it must have been my sister coming home, climbing the stairs to where her bedroom was. Still laying in bed, I called out, "Wendy? Wendy, is that you?" I heard nothing back and yelled again. Nothing, but more footsteps. I was petrified, but as I tell the story to this day, I don't understand some of my reactions that night, so I really can't explain them well. I got out of bed, opened the ajar bedroom door fully, and went out to the stairs, where I stood at the top. Below me, about halfway up the stairs, was a man I had never seen before. He looked to be early 20s, just a bit taller than my 5'7". Not a huge guy, but he had a solid build with blonde curly hair. I asked the man what the hell he was doing. His reply was a garbled mess of something along the lines of, "Where's Wendy? My mother told me not to get mixed up with women. Where's Wendy?" From his manner and wild-eyed look, it seemed like he may have been doing some drugs. He had followed me home from the park and was asking where's Wendy in response to my calling out for her. For some reason, at this exact moment, I got very angry. Not just scared, but angry. I started screaming at him to get out, to get the hell out of my house, that I was going to call my father and Wendy. To my surprise, he did just that. He turned around and ran back down the stairs like a bat out of hell, and I didn't see where he went after that. It turns out he must have just left. I have no idea how he even got in the first place, but he was definitely there for me. That's why he'd followed me home, not burglary or anything else. He was looking to rape and who knows what else. I think the only reason he actually left was because he had no idea where my sister Wendy was and thought she was in the house with me. It was an added complication to possibly getting him caught. I was so shaken I stayed up the rest of the night. I didn't call the cops, didn't call a friend. The only person I told was my sister the next day. I don't know why I did that. I just sat in a rocking chair clutching my cat, rocking and crying, staying awake till the next morning. My sister never did come home that night, stayed at a friend's and came home the next day. This all happened 35 years ago, but I've still never told anyone until now. This actually happened a few hours ago, and I'm still unsettled about the whole encounter. I decided to drop it over here and get some of it out of my system. I've had creeps tailgate me or try to grab my attention on the road. Usually I just ignore them, which has always worked. But this guy takes the golden medal. My shift starts at the afternoon. I had been feeling off for almost the entire day. A beautiful sunny day as well, mind you. You know, it's just one of those days where you drag yourself out of bed because you have to do the adulting. I decided to lift my mood up, so I wore something new that I had. A beautiful creamy white faux fur vest. I hit the road. Look like $1 million bucks? Feel like $1 million bucks, right? Well, maybe not. I played some piano tracks and hoped that I'd just get out of this funk. I really needed something to comfort me though, and those two things just weren't cutting it. While I was driving to work, I decided to grab a drink. An iced, crisp green tea would definitely lift my spirit. There were two branches of a famous coffee shop, you know who, grinning mermaid who's playing Twister, ring the bell? I could have gone to the first one with the drive-thru, but they use a pretty crappy tea brand, as they'd run out of the good stuff. So I had to go to the one that was inside a mall. Anything to feel better, right? I parked my car and saw a private fleet of black SUVs, making it quite difficult to view the entrance. This will be important later. I grabbed a cold bottle of water and headed over to the counter. I paid for my drink and got a cherry lollipop as well because why not? I waited to receive everything, and once I'd gotten it all, I started walking out. I had to pass by a fountain in the courtyard before I could reach the exit. I slowed my pace as I noticed I was walking a bit too fast. I felt a bit off now, but I brushed it off. As I passed between the SUVs, a bus shot through quickly. I stopped in shock as I'd almost just walked into its path. This didn't make me realize what was happening though. I'd gotten distracted and wasn't immediately aware of my surroundings. As I walked even further, I had to pass by an area where there wasn't anyone present. It was quite shaded, but still outdoors. It was almost like a under-the-bridge style building, if that makes sense. This was the only way to my car. I still wasn't very aware of my surroundings, until suddenly I heard footsteps over to my right. I turned and saw a man in my peripheral vision, walking and exactly matching my speed. At first, I thought he was in a uniform, so I assumed he was a part of the cleaning staff in the mall perhaps. Something told me that probably wasn't right, but I told myself I was being paranoid and overthinking things. I noticed as well that next to my car on the left side was a woman with a child getting into their own car. I was sandwiched between my car and hers. I was getting my keys out of my fur vest. I had to turn around in order to open my driver's door, as I was a bit ahead of it. Once I turned though, I fully saw that man standing there. He looked about his late 30s, skinny, average height. He had a dark blue baseball cap with sunglasses, a gray shirt with some random print on it, and black sweatpants. Croc shoes with socks too. He was so close to me that it took me by surprise a little bit, and I was startled. Being nice and polite is in my blood though, so I tried to not immediately assume the worst. The first thing he said though when he noticed I'd seen him was, "Why are you afraid?" I told him that I wasn't and asked him what he wanted. "Is your car for sale?" he said while grinning. I said no. Then he started to ask about how my day was going, stuff along those lines. What the fuck, man? I don't know you. Alarm bells were ringing in my head now. I smiled as to not escalate the situation. I knew I had to do something though. He was blocking my way to the mall entrance. I decided to go the other way, which was a pretty large shaded parking lot with a few people here and there. "It was nice to meet you, but I gotta leave," I said while smiling. "Give me your phone number," he said bluntly. I just repeated the same phrase and took a step closer to my door, as I didn't want to show him that I was afraid. I was pooping bricks at that moment. He then said something that made me want to crawl out of my skin. "Give me your phone number so I don't have to chase you around in my car." At this moment, I knew I had to move fast, so I opened my door and ignored him. He kept talking. I wasn't sure what he was saying, as it all felt muffled. My anxiety was higher than the tip of Mount Everest now. I was hit with the realization that even in a public space in broad daylight with people around, you can lose your sense of safety in a split second. I closed the door and quickly locked it. My fingers felt weak, but I managed to still turn on the car. He kept knocking at my window the entire time. He was so insistent. I put my car into reverse mode, but I still couldn't back out because the woman was halfway getting out of her parking spot, and thus forcing me to wait. He kept knocking pretty hard, saying all kinds of weird stuff. At that moment, I honestly chose to ignore him. All I wanted was to nope out of there. I was so afraid and just baffled. I had to look at the window to see when the road would be clear, so I could back out while he was standing in front of the window, rapidly knocking on it. I avoided making eye contact with him. Once the coast was clear, I slammed the gas pedal and sped off. I drove to random places while my eyes were fixed on my rearview mirror, making sure he wasn't following me. It was so hard to breathe, as my chest felt heavy and my heart was beating out of my chest. I'm glad he wasn't there, though. This creep had followed me around the mall and waited for the right moment when I was alone, and threatened me to give him my phone number, totally unaware of just how much of a creep he was being. My therapist will definitely have to hear about this. I worked in a residential healthcare facility, and for a number of years I worked with a woman named Kajiri. She was generally okay to work with, but she could be all kinds of intense. That sort of joking flirtation that often finds its way into high-pressure environments was quite common throughout the entire team, but when she directed it at me, it didn't seem quite so jokey. It took me forever to realize that, because I usually don't notice someone flirting with me until someone else points it out 6 months later. But eventually, when she started trying to give me jewelry and chocolate bouquets, I finally caught a clue. In between things being normal and actually maybe not really so normal, there was a long escalation of text messages, comments that made me uncomfortable, personal space violations, dropping by my house uninvited, hanging around on my shift hours long after hers had finished, unwanted touching, etc. Once I realized all this was happening, I put as much distance between us as possible. I stopped answering the calls and texts, locked down social media, spoke to other colleagues and had them running interference as well. Quite a lot of interference, actually. At the time, it just became sort of a running joke, but looking back on it, it was all kinds of fucked up. She even parked outside my house sometimes. I'd sit in the back room with the lights off, so she'd think I wasn't home. Honestly, 2018 me is looking back at 2016 me throwing popcorn and screaming, "Do something, you stupid cow!" But hey, 2016 me was alarmingly chill. After a couple of months of my disappearing woman act, though, she seemed to get the hint and backed right off. I was very pleased, and we all got on with our lives and lived happily ever after, right? No. A few months after it had died down, I heard through the grapevine that Kajiri seemed to have focused her attentions on a new co-worker, Linda. Linda and I did have a close mutual friend, but we didn't really know each other that well. I didn't think too much of it beyond, "Good luck, you poor fucker." A few months later again, though, I get a call out of the blue from the mutual friend Linda and I share. Without preamble, he asked, "Were you dating Kajiri?" No. I was shocked. He had been privy to all the awkward details of my experience with Kajiri, and had helped to run interference even. He explained that he'd been talking to Linda, and she'd asked about my relationship. The story that followed still sounds too fantastical to actually have happened in an actual sensible grown-up workplace. Apparently, Kajiri had been catfishing her own best friend Amanda posing as Linda. In a string of emails, Linda and Amanda had discussed Kajiri's drug problem, her abusive and dangerous ex, none other than yours truly, Linda coming out to her family after her brother caught her in bed with Kajiri, and even more. The jig was up when Linda got a second job, coincidentally with Amanda's husband, who mentioned how great it was to finally meet Kajiri's girlfriend. That puzzled poor straight single Linda. This woman had been living out an entire soap opera, using her co-workers and friends as set pieces. Linda and I reported her to management, and she was immediately suspended pending investigation. She quit a short 2 days later. Unfortunately, HR decided they needed to continue their investigation of the allegation that I had an orgy at work, because that's a totally plausible thing to just happen with nobody noticing and not at all made up by a crazy woman. I left that job just a month later myself, and when I interviewed for my current job, she had interviewed just a half an hour before me, and they were looking to hire 2 people. Thankfully, she didn't get the job, but there have been other openings since then, and she's applied for all of them. I'm terrified of meeting her again. It turned out she has a history of inpatient psych treatment for delusional behavior, and was known to be obsessive about people she took a liking to. In fact, according to Facey, her current girlfriend, real, not real, me, who knows, has a similar first name as me and shares more than a few physical similarities as well. She also still knows where I live. So a long time ago, I had a falling out with a friend who liked to cyber harass people she didn't like. Because I already knew this, I took precautions on all my social media and even added two-step verification where it would send codes to your cell phone if someone tried to log in or change your password. Seemed like a pretty safe step, right? I never even thought about it any further until just a few days ago. I got sent an SMS text from a random number that addressed me by my full first name. This freaked me out a little, of course, because the spelling of my first name is pretty uncommon where I'm from. No big deal, maybe it's an old friend who changed phones or something. I gave the classic, "Who dis?" back at them, to which I received an even stranger text back. "Oh my goodness, it's you. Are you 18? I have something I want to cash app you." Well, that's weird, I thought. Probably just some scam to hack my cash app or something. I said again, "Who the fuck is this?" Never received a text back from that number. No less than 5 minutes later, though, I get 3 calls and 2 spam voicemails from different unrecognized phone numbers. Then a text as well. Pick up the phone. My full name. Well, that was alarming. Immediately I took screenshots and had my boyfriend call from his phone, but no luck. I blocked the number and hoped that would be it. Maybe 30 minutes later, I get 5 calls from a brand new number and a new, even more alarming set of texts. "I'm a 40-year-old man and I am in love with you. I'll keep trying to reach you until you respond. I won't stop." I immediately blocked the number and called my parents. Within 2 minutes, he'd made a new number and started texting me again. "Wow, I just want to talk to you for 5 minutes. I mean, I'll even pay you. But after that, consider me gone." Again blocked. I alerted my boss. Then the text stopped. After work, I filed a police report and bought a baseball bat and set up some security alarms as well in my apartment. My very first instinct was that it was a guy I had recently worked with who had just been fired for sexual harassment. One of my friends and coworkers was good at tech stuff and changed his phone number and texted the number, pretending to be me on a burner, to get some information out of the person. It was a bit of a long conversation. I'll sum it up by saying this guy basically wanted to talk to me on the phone while he jerked off. He called me 26 times and got no answer, so finally he stopped trying. We assumed that was going to be the end of it. Instead, the next morning I got a new text from a new number again. This time it was someone claiming to be one of my friend's fathers. I started to really freak out now. Both of my parents and my boyfriend were at work, so he sent his mom over to calm me down and stay with me while I was alone in my apartment. The person called my phone. His mom answered, and all he said in this super creepy, raspy voice was, "Please," then abruptly hung up. I was having a full-blown panic attack at this point, so she called the police department and had an officer come out to update my report. She was still texting the guy while the cop was there, and once she told him law enforcement had been contacted, the man's entire story changed. He said he didn't know me or anything about me, didn't even live near me, and meant no physical harm. Just a lonely guy who'd got my number from Facebook and decided to harass me. I might have remembered this wrong, but I could have sworn I had set my phone number to private. I know I had it up there because of two-step verification, but well, I had recently posted something on the Facebook Marketplace, so I assume that's where he'd found it. I have deleted that account since and changed my phone number, and nothing else has happened. I'm posting this here more or less as a warning to anyone who has two-step verification set up. Please double-check right now and make sure you have the most private settings possible for everything. I'm not even going to set all that stuff up with my new phone number. I'm not going to risk giving it out anywhere online.